Donnie Swaggart is in the middle of his third marriage, and the Swaggarts don't want you to know that. This video is not about divorce, it's about cover-up. The legal evidence used in this video comes from the East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse, where marriage licenses are available to the public to obtain copies of. Divorce records are searchable even when the actual documents have been sealed. I will cite case numbers where applicable. Donnie Swaggart married Deborah K. Robertson on June 28, 1974. But 28 years later, Donnie filed for divorce against Debbie October 8, 2002, case number F145242. As someone living in Baton Rouge at the time testified, the Swaggarts repossessed Debbie's car and literally kicked her off the property. For several days, she could not even access her personal belongings. That witness also testified that Debbie was constantly looking over her shoulder at the time. She actually appeared fearful for her life. The divorce between Donnie and Debbie finalized in 2003. They had been married for approximately 28 years. And once Donnie divorced Debbie, all the Swaggarts divorced Debbie. They wanted their staff and their church to divorce Debbie and treat her as though she didn't even exist. Since so many people failed to comply with the Swaggarts' mandate, the church went through a horrible split, not over doctrine, but over Debbie. Most people still loved and respected Debbie. They fully objected to what they watched the Swaggarts doing to their daughter-in-law. At least half of the church wanted to keep in touch with Debbie, and so did many of the staff. So the Swaggarts threatened their staff with termination, and any church members caught communicating with Debbie would be banished from the property. The Swaggarts' new policy was clear. You must treat Debbie as though she doesn't exist or face consequences. Not everyone complied, and the Swaggarts ended up firing some of their non-compliant staff. They fired their youth minister, Philip Pimlott. They also fired one of their main singers, Tabitha Pimlott. Other prominent faces left on their own. Rita King Chadwick, the Swaggarts' longtime music director, soloist, vocal arranger, chart writer, and vocal instructor, resigned over the Swaggarts' ungodly ultimatum against Debbie. Rita had been there since 1989, and her decision to leave was costly. Huge numbers of people from the congregation suddenly left the church. Their exits left one overwhelming message for the Swaggarts. What you are doing against Debbie is wrong, and we don't think you're the Christians that you pretend to be. Here is one testimony of someone who was there in 2003. It was April 2003, and Swaggart just had the big church split after Donnie's divorce. Some were fired, both ministry staff and music department staff, for staying in contact with Debbie Swaggart, who they admired, which culminated in Swaggart's longtime music director, Rita King, resigning. A church split ensued, with quite a few of the congregation and staff leaving. Rita King and her husband starting a church with part of the congregation. Another pastor was fired for communication with Debbie Swaggart. That pastor started another church with other members that left in the fray. As we can see, Donnie Swaggart's divorce from Debbie was a huge deal. People who attended the church at the time knew how big a deal it was. Yet the Swaggarts today want their current audience to stay totally ignorant about those years. Though many people have questioned the Swaggarts about Debbie's whereabouts over the past several years, the Swaggarts either refused to answer those questions or they would gaslight those who asked them. But the truth is, Donnie and Debbie went through a divorce that publicly abused Debbie. It exposed a dark side of the Swaggart family that the Swaggarts don't want you to see. The steady turnover of attendees at Family Worship Center reduces their weekly offerings, but it sometimes works in the Swaggarts' favor. In cases like Donnie's divorce from Debbie, only a few people who attend Family Worship Center today even know about the divorce. Most of the hundreds of people who were there at the time have long since left the church. The few who attend Family Worship Center today and do know about the divorce know full well that if they want to keep their jobs or remain free to attend church, they better keep their mouths shut. So what happened next? After Donnie divorced Debbie in 2003, Donnie married another woman named Judy Dove the following year. Donnie and Judy tied the knot on August 22, 2004, according to their marriage license. Judy appeared several times at Family Worship Center. She sat right on the stage next to Donnie, where he always sits. Donnie at times referred to Judy by name when he preached. Judy and I this, or Judy and I that. Judy appeared to enjoy traveling with Donnie, and Donnie appeared to enjoy having her come with him. We can still see a few of those instances of Judy and Donnie appearing as husband and wife at Family Worship Center. However, the Swaggarts never accepted Judy. They never officially introduced her to their TV audience because that wouldn't have been good for business. Informing those outside of Baton Rouge that there had been a divorce would likely have cost the Swaggarts substantial amounts of money. Surely the conservative, evangelical, and Pentecostal Christians who gave money to the Swaggarts at the time would not have condoned the divorce itself, leave alone the inexcusable way the Swaggarts treated Debbie afterwards. As so many who have worked for the organization know, Frances Swaggart, Donnie's mother, wields a heavy hand of authority in everything around her. Donnie's marriage was no exception. However, Judy, an educated and reasonable Christian woman, had made it clear that she married Donnie and not his mother. Consequently, it didn't take long for Frances to make her decision. Judy has to go. So in 2007, barely 3 years after promising his faithfulness to Judy, Donnie succumbed to pressure from his mother. Donnie announced to Judy that he was going to divorce her. Judy contested the divorce, but could see that no discussion would change Donnie's mind. Judy beat Donnie to the actual filing on July 12, 2007. Case number F162501. Once the divorce was finalized, Donnie remained single for 4 more years. He didn't rush back to Debbie. By 2011, Donnie had been divorced from Debbie for almost 9 years. Then, out of the blue, in September of 2011, Donnie negotiated for a new contract with Debbie. It wasn't organic and seemed too formal and even peculiar. Close observers speculated that tying the knot this time served pragmatic purposes rather than the fulfillment of rekindled romance. The Swaggart Ministry was in trouble. More of their secret activities had just gotten exposed, and public relations sank deeper into the hole. Damning evidence provided all of the receipts, and those receipts went public. Just months earlier, a leaked email revealed that 4 employees had deep concerns about some disturbing activities at Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. Among other things, inappropriate materials were being printed at that ministry print shop on a regular basis. The 4 employees named in the email thought that the Swaggarts needed to know. The email mentioned concern only. At the time, those employees still believed that Jimmy Swaggart was probably not involved, but he needed to know about it. However, the Swaggarts already knew about those materials. So instead of investigating what the printing department was printing, the Swaggarts chose to fire the concerned employees identified in that email. On June 21, 2011, 4 outstanding and God-fearing employees were fired by Frances Swaggart herself, all within the same hour. One of those employees was me. No severance pay, no unemployment insurance, just sent away simply because we were concerned about some very disturbing activities going on at Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. However, the Swaggarts' decision to fire the innocent ones backfired on them. One of the employees fired had been working in the printing department and witnessed the printing of those materials personally. He had managed to save from the trash many of the proofs over the course of a few weeks. He also obtained invoices undeniably linking the inappropriate jobs directly to the ministry. After the print shop employee was fired, he desperately wanted to tell Jimmy Swaggart about those materials. Surely Jimmy didn't know. So he wrote a letter to Jimmy and handed the letter along with a few copies of those proofs directly to Jimmy. Jimmy's lack of response was clear. He knew full well what they were printing, and he also approved the decision to fire those who were concerned about them. In fact, the following day after we were fired, he made a public announcement on a Wednesday night saying that there had been a security breach and that the individuals involved were fired. After Jimmy indicated his complicity with the printing project, one of the other employees that was fired scanned the materials and published them on her website. Again, the evidence was damning. Nearly 20 proofs showing not only how disturbing the materials were, but also the invoices showing that they were printed on Jimmy Swaggart Ministry equipment and performed by Jimmy Swaggart Ministries employees during normal business hours at Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. Payment for the jobs themselves came from an LLC called Lucist 7. Although the invoices state checks payable to JSM, the transactions typically involved cash only, as testified by that printing department employee that was fired. These materials revealed a shocking backstage view of Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, a view all too familiar to anyone who has actually worked for the Swaggarts and has seen what goes on when they are not on camera. After the printing scandal went public, the Swaggarts knew they had to do something. First, Jimmy's sex scandals of the 80s and 90s.
Lurid allegations sweeping the media about evangelist Jimmy Swaggart.
And I told him he looked familiar, but I wasn't sure. And he said, "I'm Jimmy Swaggart."
I have never met or seen this woman.
I imagine he did see other girls, but I don't know who they were. I'd pick him up and we'd come back here. I'll say this, he has an unbelievable imagination.
Then Donnie's divorces, and now this. Donnie had been single for 4 years. Debbie appeared to be single as well. Maybe if they presented a good enough offer to Debbie, she might agree to come back. If Debbie didn't mind appearing as Donnie's wife again, then hopefully they could clean up a major blemish of the ministry. They could slide her right back in and make things appear as if no divorces ever happened. If anyone questions about their marital history, just gaslight them. And like magic, the ugly divorce that happened between the Swaggarts and Debbie Swaggart could just disappear. Well, their idea worked. Donnie and Debbie signed another marriage contract, and very quietly. It took place right at lunchtime on day 4 of a share-a-thon, September 23rd, 2011. For Debbie, it was her second marriage, and for Donnie, it was his third. There was no public fanfare and not even any public announcement, because of course the Swaggarts had to keep it quiet. Debbie was back. Viewer questions previously brushed aside could now be answered with, "Hey, what are you talking about? Debbie's Donnie's wife, and they've been married since 1974. The Swaggarts had found the golden piece to start rebuilding their ministry facade. Just 2 months later, on the last night of camp meeting 2011, Jimmy had the entire family walk up to the stage. There had been no new births and no new marriages, of course, except Donnie's and Debbie's secret remarriage. Jimmy that night had one objective: deceive his audience into thinking that Debbie has always been there. Jimmy first announced Donnie's and Debbie's names very specifically. That is what Jimmy wanted everyone to hear. Then after that, he was pretty casual about everyone else's names, kids and grandkids, as he told them to come on up as well.
I'm going to do something that we've never done before here in this church. It's because we have some new additions to the party. I want Donnie and Debbie to come. I want Gabriel and Matthew and Jennifer to come. And I want them to bring their muffins with them. Cliff, oh, you, there he is. He's coming. Come ahead. I'm very proud of my family. Donnie, what's her name?
Lola Josephine Rose Swaggart.
That's the newest addition right there. The next newest addition is...
This is Abby Jill Swaggart.
And then the next addition is Ryder. And the next addition is...
Samantha.
Samantha. Okay, praise the Lord.
Debbie, wearing an off-white suit, took center stage. The exercise seemed almost like a photo op, designed to mislead his audience about Donnie and Debbie's marriage, as if to say, "See, Donnie and Debbie are married. All those rumors you heard were nothing but lies." This is the kind of tactic that Jimmy Swaggart Ministries relies on for its very existence. They use it far more than their audience could ever imagine. In a 2013 episode of Francis and Friends, Donnie Swaggart responded to calls from viewers. At the time, he had been remarried to Debbie for a little over a year. Donnie and Debbie thus barely had 30 years together, with a period of 9 years between those years, full of pain caused by a vicious divorce. When one of the callers that morning asked about marriage and divorce, Donnie responded with the following statement.
He uses that scripture in Matthew about if any man divorces his wife and remarries, he's committing adultery.
The Lord was talking to Israel, and Israel was representative of his people. Bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. In the Bible, the marriage between a man and a woman is looked at as the relationship between God and the believer. That's why we're called the bride, and he's called the bridegroom. And he's not looking for a date, he's looking for a marriage. If you've been married, I've been married almost 40 years. I've been married almost 40 years. Hey, it ain't all roses and sunshine.
Donnie clearly deceived his audience that morning. He had not been married for 40 years. Donnie and Debbie had only been married for 30 years. There's a big difference between 30 and 40. This was intentional because 40 is how many years they would have been married if the divorces had never occurred. Donnie also conveyed to his audience that morning that marriage commitment is serious and should not be viewed lightly or flippantly. Yet for some reason, when Donnie married Debbie the second time, he chose an option in their marriage license that does not reflect commitment or sincerity. The state of Louisiana offers two options to any couple applying for a marriage license. If they seriously intend to commit to each other, then the couple agrees to a covenant marriage, and they check off the box indicating that on the license. A covenant marriage in the state of Louisiana requires more steps to dissolve, more safeguards to keep it going should the couple be tempted to do something rash or whimsical to terminate their marriage. For some reason, Donnie and Debbie opted out of that. Their marriage, according to their license, is not a covenant marriage. While this, on one hand, is definitely between them and the Lord, at the same time, Donnie projects an image to his audience from which he wants his audience to view him as and donate money to him as a spiritual leader.
I'm looking at the totals that we did for the Bible-thon, and they are not acceptable.
Preaching commitment to impress your audience, yet secretly opting out of covenant when signing a new marriage contract, speaks to the difference between appearance and reality. Have nothing to do with the hidden activities of sin, but instead expose them.